Welcome back to my channel, Celeb Buzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. He was huge at 84. Cliff Richard tells everything in his book. Cliff Richard was born Harry Roger Webb on October 14th, 1940 in Lucknow, British India. Cliff's early years were hard, but he was strong. After Indian independence, his family moved back to England in 1948. They lived in Hertfordshire. As a kid, he had trouble getting used to life after the war in Britain. He faced being poor and feeling out of place, but music became his way out and what he loved most. By his teens, he dreamed of being a performer. He took the stage name Cliff Richard. Cliff meant the rock in rock and roll. Richard was to honor Little Richard, one of his music heroes. Cliff broke onto the British music scene in the late 1000s, 950s. This was when rock and roll was still new and some people didn't like it. His 1958 hit song Move It is often called the first real British rock and roll song. Even John Lennon once said it was groundbreaking. With his band The Shadows, who were first called the Drifters, Cliff quickly became the UK's answer to Elvis Presley. His early look as the cool guitar-playing rock star won the hearts of teenagers all over the country. Through the 1000s, 960s, Cliff Richard not only kept his success, but stayed popular even as the Beatles and the British invasion changed music. He starred in fun, very successful musical movies like The Young Ones in 1961, Summer Holiday in 1963, and Wonderful Life in 1964. This made him even more popular. His screen presence and clean image made him loved by people of all ages. This let him connect with different generations. But Cliff's story isn't just about hit songs and show business success. It's also about spiritual awakening and personal change. In 1966, he publicly said he was a Christian. This decision had a big impact on his life and career. He began to put more moral messages in his performances. He got involved with charities and religious programs. Unlike many other stars, Cliff kept a good reputation for being honest and disciplined. He never got married, and his private life stayed mostly dignified and free from scandal, even after decades in the public eye. In the 1970s and 1980s, Cliff changed himself again. He went from teen idol to mature pop artist. He did one of the hardest things in the industry, lasting success across decades. He had major hits like Devil Woman in 1976, We Don't Talk Anymore in 1979, Wired for Sound in 1981, and the Christmas favorite Mistletoe and Wine in 1988. Cliff's ability to change his style while staying true to his values let him reach new fans without losing his original fan base. His work with modern producers and his openness to new musical directions showed a flexibility that many of his peers didn't have. Despite facing challenges, including legal battles and a high-profile investigation in the 2000s and 2010s, which ended with no charges and widespread sympathy, Cliff Richard stayed a symbol of never giving up and dignity. In 1995, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II for his services to music and charity. He became the first rock and roll artist to get such an honor. The knighthood wasn't just a personal award. It was also a recognition of his cultural impact and long-standing contributions to British life. Cliff Richard holds many records and awards. He is the only artist to have had UK top 5 hits in 8 straight decades. This is an amazing testament to his lasting popularity. He has sold over 250 million records worldwide. His name is often mentioned alongside the greats of music history. His loyal fan base, known as Cliffettes, or simply Cliff fans, spans generations and stays passionately devoted to him. His Christmas singles have become part of British holiday tradition. This shows his ability to blend sentiment with accessibility. Beyond the statistics and the fame, however, Cliff Richard is remembered for something deeper. His commitment to staying grounded, his courage to speak openly about his faith, and his strength in facing adversity. He has used his platform not only to entertain, but also to inspire. He offers a different role model in a celebrity culture often marked by excess and instability. Cliff Richard, one of the most lasting figures in British popular music, has lived a life that defies traditional expectations. Despite being admired and loved by millions, Richard has stayed a lifelong bachelor. This is an unusual and much discussed aspect of his public persona. His romantic life, though often the subject of media fascination, has been marked more by restraint and emotional complexity than by scandal or brief affairs. One of the most touching insights into Richard's personal decisions came to light decades after it happened. It was through a deeply heartfelt letter he wrote in October 1961 to his first serious girlfriend, Australian dancer Delia Wicks. In that letter, 3 pages long and written when Richard was just 21 years old, he poured out the pain of choosing between personal happiness and his growing career. The couple had been in a steady relationship for 18 months. This was a significant amount of time for someone in the early whirlwind phase of fame. Richard wrote, honestly confessing that as a pop singer at the height of his rising fame, he felt forced to sacrifice one priceless thing, the right to any lasting relationship with any special girl. The decision, he wrote, was one of the most difficult he had ever made. He hoped that it would not hurt her too much, but it was clear he knew it would. He continued to explain that giving up his musical career, the passion that had come to define his very identity, was unthinkable. He also expressed a sense of deep family responsibility, saying that since the early death of his father, his mother, and sisters had come to rely on him entirely, he acknowledged that show business was now in his blood and that he would be lost without it. In one of the most tender and selfless passages of the letter, Richard urged Wicks to move on, to seek happiness with someone who could give her the life she deserved. Find someone who is free to love you as you deserve to be loved, he wrote, and someone who is able to marry you. It was a moment of emotional maturity and self-awareness, showcasing a young man dealing with the tension between love and duty and choosing a path that would ultimately define the rest of his life. Decades later, when Delia Wicks passed away in 2010 at the age of 71 after battling cancer, her brother Graham revealed that she had remained deeply affected by Richard's decision. He said that she had been devastated by the breakup and described Richard as a very pleasant man. It was a quiet but lasting heartbreak, an example of the emotional cost of fame that often goes unseen by the public eye. Just a year after his breakup with Wick, when Richard was 22, he entered into a brief romantic relationship with the bubbly and beloved British actress Una Stubbs. She was known for her lively personality and talent. Those who's already becoming a fixture in British entertainment, their romance, though short-lived, reflected Richard's ongoing search for meaningful companionship amid the challenges of celebrity life. Later in the 1960s, Richard's romantic life took another serious turn when he began dating dancer Jackie Irving. He recalled that period with great fondness, describing Irving as utterly beautiful and remembering how inseparable they had once been. The relationship was more than a casual fling. It was one in which he appeared to genuinely consider marriage. Yet, as with previous relationships, the pressures and complexities of his public role likely contributed to its eventual end. Irving later married singer and actor Adam Faith, and Richard was once again left to quietly reflect on what might have been. The 1980s brought perhaps the most well-documented and widely speculated upon romance of Richard's life, his relationship with tennis star Sue Barker. Barker, a former French Open champion and Wimbledon semifinalist, was at the peak of her athletic career when she met Richard in 1982 at the age of 25. Their romance quickly captured the public imagination, fueled by a blend of athletic glamour and pop star charisma. Richard, who was by then firmly established as a national icon, flew to Denmark to watch Barker compete in a tennis match. The two were soon photographed together at Wimbledon, cuddling and holding hands. The images sparked a media frenzy, with tabloids and fans alike wondering if the eternal bachelor might finally be ready to settle down. In a 1983 interview, Richard openly discussed the possibility of marriage with Barker, stating, "I'm seeing Sue, the only girl I want to see at the moment, and if marriage comes on the horizon, I shall relish it." It was a rare and unguarded moment, offering the public a glimpse of Richard as a man genuinely thinking about a future that included love, partnership, and family. Yet by September of that year, he had tempered expectations, saying, "It's not vital to get married, and it's not vital to be a father, but I would like to settle down and have a family one day." In July 1984, Barker herself spoke warmly of Richard, saying, "I love him, he's great, and I'm sure we love each other." Their mutual affection and respect were clear, but once again, the romance faded. By 1986, Barker had begun dating tennis player Stephen Shaw, and Richard commented that he and Barker still shared a valued friendship. "We have a mutual respect for each other, and that means a lot to me." Throughout his life, Richard has spoken with honest openness about his romantic experiences, explaining why marriage never came to pass. "I've had a few false alarms," he once admitted. "I've been in love, but marriage is a big commitment, and being an artist consumes a great deal of time." His words underscore the central conflict that has shaped his romantic choices. The tension between personal desires and professional obligations. One of the most bittersweet chapters in Richard's romantic history involved the legendary singer and actress Olivia Newton-John. Speaking of his feelings for her, Richard recalled being in love with her during the early 1970s, but as he explained with quiet resignation, at the time when I and many of us were in love with Olivia, she was engaged to someone else. I'm afraid I lost the chance. Newton-John, known for her grace, beauty, and talent, held a special place in the hearts of many, Richard included. His comments reflect a lingering sense of what might have been, a theme that echoes through several of the relationships he's discussed publicly. At the age of 84, Sir Cliff Richard, the lasting icon of British pop music, has finally decided to open up the pages of his life in the most honest and unfiltered way. In his newest memoir, A Head Full of Music and Memories, Richard not only revisits his remarkable 70-decade career, but also shares long-guarded personal reflections, memories of stardom, and intimate stories involving some of the most legendary figures in music history. One of the most surprising and headline-grabbing revelations comes in a chapter where he reflects on the sheer cultural magnitude of the Beatles, and more specifically on his personal admiration for Paul McCartney. When Cliff declares he was massive, it's not just a comment on Paul McCartney's fame. It's a statement that echoes with deep professional respect, competitive admiration, and emotional weight. Richard, who was already a household name in the UK by the time the Beatles rose to prominence in the early 1960s, describes how McCartney's emergence and the Beatles' overall explosion shifted the musical landscape almost overnight. For Cliff, who had dominated the British charts in the 1950s with hits like Move It and Living Doll, the Beatles posed both a challenge and a revelation. He admits that Paul's artistry, charisma, and songwriting genius were undeniable and revolutionary, even to an already established star like himself. In the book, Cliff doesn't shy away from detailing the moment when he first heard Love Me Do on the radio. He recalls being struck by its freshness and authenticity, sensing instinctively that the Beatles, and Paul especially, were ushering in something entirely new. While he had once been dubbed the British Elvis, Cliff humbly concedes that Paul McCartney redefined the game with a sound that was both youthful and timeless. He writes of McCartney's uncanny ability to blend poetic lyricism with universal appeal, turning ordinary themes into cultural phenomena. Paul didn't just write songs, Cliff confesses. He wrote the soundtrack to our youth, to our lives. What's particularly poignant is that despite the occasional tensions between pre-Beatles stars like Cliff and the new wave that the Beatles represented, Richard insists there was never any real rivalry, only mutual respect. We weren't enemies, we were pioneers in different ways, he notes in his memoir. I was the warm-up act for a musical revolution that Paul and the Beatles completed. Cliff's revelations go further, diving into private interactions and personal memories. He describes running into Paul at industry events and award ceremonies, and how McCartney always maintained an air of modesty despite his colossal success. He never acted like a sir, even after he was knighted, Cliff says with a grin. He was always approachable, grounded, funny too. He even recalls sharing a quiet moment backstage with Paul during a Royal Variety performance, where the two joked about aging rock stars and the pressure to stay relevant. It was in that moment, Cliff admits, that he felt a rare kinship with someone who understood both the weight of fame and the isolation it sometimes brings. The memoir also touches on the way both he and McCartney experience intense media scrutiny and the often painful intersection of personal life and public image. Cliff speaks honestly about the price of stardom, echoing the unspoken bond shared among icons who have been in the spotlight since youth. He reveals that watching Paul continue to perform well into his 70s and 80s inspired him to stay active in his own career, touring, recording, and embracing his legacy with pride rather than retreating from it. As Cliff reflects on his life, it's clear that his words about McCartney are more than admiration. They are a tribute to a fellow survivor of fame, to a musical brother who helped shape the golden age of British pop. In confessing his lifelong respect for Paul McCartney, Cliff Richard not only honors a titan of music, but also places himself honestly within the story of that era, acknowledging the giants who came after him while celebrating the role he played in opening the door. Now in his 9th decade, Cliff Richard's memoir is not just a tell-all, it's a testament to the endurance of talent, friendship, and the complex mosaic of music history. His reflections on Paul McCartney offer a rare window into the mutual admiration shared by two of Britain's most beloved performers, each a legend in his own right, each forever linked in the story of modern music.